There's some big news to go over today's MLB insider Ben Nicholson Smith has dropped a massive Jays trade report. We're going to break down what that report is and discuss what it means going forward, as it involves one particular player that is extremely interesting. We're also going to break down multiple big updates ahead of their game against the White Sox as they strive for their 10th, yes, 10th straight win in a row. But before we get into it all, if you're a part of the percentage and aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys again for your continued support over here. You guys have been absolute beasts, folks. A lot to go over today, and obviously we've been talking a lot about the Jays and their winning, and hopefully we can still talk about that following tonight's game. 10 wins in a row would be crazy. But a new report is dropped from Ben Nicholson Smith surrounding specifically one trade target, but also just a general update overall here for the Jays. So let's start with this here. You can see here, basically, Ben Nicholson Smith went on the show with Blake Murphy and started off the show, and he gave a ton of information. If you actually watch the whole thing, there's a lot of tidbits that I'm going to break down in this video. Stay tuned till the end. But it says the swing and miss is what's really going to cost a lot. He's basically talking about what's going to cost a lot at the trade deadline for Ross Atkins for the Toronto Blue Jays. And he basically goes on to say that the swing and miss is what costs a lot. Now, you pair that with actually reading and listening, I guess, rather not reading, listening throughout the whole thing. And there was a Reddit thread that broke down each single comment, and I wanted to dive into that for you guys because it's very interesting here. And this is basically it. On the show with Blake Murphy, Ben Nicholson Smith thinks that of all the pitchers, Jacob DeGrom is the highest ticket item that he thinks will be available. And he confirms that the front office would be interested in Jacob DeGrom when he becomes available. And there's been a lot of rumblings, and I've been kind of hinting at it in my videos over the past few days, past few weeks even, surrounding Jacob DeGrom, because he's on a team that's probably going to end up being sellers. And this is a very interesting piece of information because we think back to previous years when Ben Nicholson Smith has come out and basically said, like, he'll temper expectations, right? And he'll say even prior to the trade deadline, whether or not the front office will be involved in certain players, he seems that, pretty confident that if this player becomes available at the trade market, at the trade deadline, that Ross Atkins would swing for the fences here. And I think that kind of goes to show just how big of a trade deadline this is. Like Ross Atkins, Mark Shapiro, John Schneider, Chris Bassett, they're all in the final years of their deal. And there's a lot of other players who are also in the final years of the deal. But from the management perspective, of course, Schneider, Atkins, and Shapiro, right? You look at it from that perspective, and this is their chance to go all in. They're first in the AL East. Anytime you have a chance to win the division, you have to go for it. And whether or not they're able to win the division and surpass the Astros to guarantee themselves an ALDS placement is still up in the air, but you have to go for it. This team hasn't even sniffed an AL East title, AL East championship in 10 years, and now they have a chance to be able to actually win it. And it goes to show that, according to Ben Nicholson Smith, the Jays are getting ready and preparing to go all in. And we're going to have tons of different videos covering this because there's a lot of reports coming out about who they're willing to trade, who they're not willing to trade, etc. But Jacob DeGrom is the highest ticket item he thinks would be available. And that's, of course, because of the struggles of the Texas Rangers. Now, Jacob DeGrom would cost one of Arjun Amala or Trey Savage, right? You would have to assume that despite his injury concerns over the past, 6 years, really over his entire career. This season, he's finally semi-healthy. 18 starts, 2.29 ERA. He's 37 years old, put up 106 innings. And I'm very curious to see what you guys think about this because let's assume you give up one of Trey Savage or Arjun Amala because obviously you'd give up any prospect probably to get him if it's not those two. Let's assume it's Trey Savage for the sake of argument here. I don't know if I would do that just because he's 37. However, there is a case to be made that getting one of the best pitchers of all time, especially if he would have stayed healthy, you would be positioned, he would be your ace, right? Despite being 37 years old, he's still one of the best pitchers in baseball. You look at his stats this year. You look at his stats even when not healthy, he was dominant. And of course, the Rangers probably going to be sellers. If they're trading Jacob DeGrom, he still has, I believe, 2 more years, at least 1 more year of control here. So the Jays would, have a starter for the next couple of years, of course, bearing injury. But the Rangers would have to want an absolute haul back. And that's why I'm curious to see. So let me know down below in the comment section. Would you give up a guy like Arjun Amala or Trey Savage for the surefire that is Jacob DeGrom? He would be your frontline starter. He would start game 1 in the playoffs. He would help you down the stretch. He would be able to almost guarantee you a win almost every time he steps out there. 9-2 this year. And having Max Scherzer and Jacob DeGrom on your team down the stretch, that might be worth it just in itself. And you look at what it would cost, right? And Trey Savage is the Jays' number 2 prospect, struggling in Double-A a little bit. There's been a lot of talks about Joe Ryan as well as younger, and maybe if you're going to go for a starting pitcher, you go for a guy like Joe Ryan who would require multiple, prospects. If you're the Jays, would you give up Trey Savage? I don't know. The answer is yes, and I think that, Ross Atkins has been very calculated in his moves, but calculated aggressive, right? He's still been aggressive. He's been calculated, but in an aggressive manner. And of course, we'll dive into some of the moves because, Ben Nicholson-Smith did a whole chart full. But like Jacob DeGrom, anytime you have a chance to get him on your team, he is unbelievable. He's finally having a healthy year. But if you go out and you trade, let's say, one of your top prospects, and the Jays finally have a farm system now that is thriving, and then he ends up getting hurt or something bad happens, 37 years old, you're going to be looking back and thinking, what did we just do, right? But at the same time, if it works out, he stays healthy, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball, you could then propel yourself to an AL East championship, maybe even surpassing the Astros. I mean, again, you look now, the Jays are 3.5 games up on the Yankees. They're multiple games up on the wild card spot. Like, they're comfortably in a playoff spot as of right now, like 5 or 6 or 7 games up. But then, of course, you look at the Astros who they're trying to catch. Again, you can see at the bottom there, they're 55 and 36, I believe it is at the time of recording. It might be 55 and 37. Like, they can catch them, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Now, again, it's going to be very difficult to pull this off, but I think it's a very notable, like, if there's a team that's going to go all in, it would be the Jays. Is there other teams that can surpass the Jays package? Absolutely, if they want to, because the Jays, although they have a very good farm system, they don't have the top of the line farm system that can help get some of the blue chip prospects, or blue chip players rather, with their blue chip prospects, but they can go out and get guys, I think more likely maybe some of the B plus to A- tier guys instead of the A plus guys. And Ben Nicholson-Smith gave some of those guys as well. You can see this here, and we'll have a full video covering the rest of this. Basically goes on to say some of the other starting pitchers like Nathan Eovaldi, Sandy Alcantara, decent return of prospects, bearing them having an Amala package. Their offers for these tiers of players aren't over the top compared to other teams. That's why I'm thinking it's going to be interesting for Jacob DeGrom, but I'll save this for another video as well. But let me know down below, do you want to see Jacob? I mean, obviously you want to see Jacob DeGrom as a Blue Jay, but would you give up one of their blue chip prospects not named Arjun? I mean, would you even maybe give up Arjun Amala? I think he's probably untouchable at this point. They see him as the shortstop of the future, especially depending on, BOMBSHELL's future. Obviously, Jimenez can slide into shortstop in the interim. It's going to be interesting there, and let me know down below what your thoughts are on that. A very big report. Front office is interested. Now, let's look at some of the other trades that they have done in previous years. And of course, we'll do this. I'm going to be using this screenshot a lot here. You look at previous years at the deadline, like the Jays have been absolutely, finessing teams. And of course, they haven't really lost. I mean, you could argue the Dalton Varsho trade. I probably would still think it's a fine deal for the Jays. The Nick Frasso for Mitch White, that trade ended up being fine. Like a lot of these these are all deadline. A lot of these deadline deals that they have made are very, very solid. And you pair that with the fact that they're going to be aggressive, it's going to be a very scary time for us to watch what Ross Atkins can do. And scary in a good way. I think he's going to pull off maybe even an unthinkable trade here at the deadline because he's always been aggressive. Multiple years where they've been competing, multiple moves, and we can expect that as well. One thing before I wrap up, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. randomly this morning, we got a tweet from Keegan Matheson here. He said via his interpreter just this morning at the stadium, once I wake up, I just can't wait to get to the field to be with my teammates. It's been unbelievable. It's what any manager wants, a team like that and a culture like that. Vibes are at an all-time high right now. You have Vladdy coming out and randomly saying this stuff, which is obviously fantastic news. They are about to, if they win tonight, knock on wood, put the last 10 games column on the right there on MLB.com into 10-0, which is something we haven't seen since 2015 when they won 11 straight games. Vibes are at an all-time high. Got to take care of business tonight, and hopefully they can do that and then propel themselves to, hopefully, it's obviously World Series aspirations and, of course, a playoff spot for sure. But that'll wrap it up. Let me know down below what your thoughts are.